destroys parts of the Bahamas, the forecast for Florida and the Southeast hinges on when it will turn north.
A little bit more to the west, and it's more of a direct impact on the state of Florida. We expect another at least 24 hours of time for this catastrophic situation. A Cat 5 right now, wind sustained to 165 miles an hour. It's moving at 1 mile per hour, essentially stalled out over the Bahamas. They have at least 24 hours before it will begin to move away. And when it does, we anticipate that it'll accelerate pretty rapidly once it makes that turn more to the north and west. Question is, when does that happen? We anticipate that occurring probably about 24 to 48 hours from now, maybe as it's transitioning down to a Cat 4, because it will start to encounter some shear. Then it rides sort of parallel to the state of Florida, potentially making a turn, keeping it parallel to the U.S. coastline for days on end. But again, if we have just a small shift to the west, we could have a direct impact with anywhere along the southeast coastline in areas within that cone of error. Now, this is what we're talking about in terms of who will feel what. You see that red area right there, that red circle, that's hurricane force winds. That would put West Palm, Fort Pierce, Melbourne by tomorrow morning in tropical storm force conditions, keeping the vast majority of the hurricane conditions offshore. But it may not remain that way with just a shift, just a small amount, Anthony, so we're watching it.
We need help. Everything down. Everything down. Look at my roof off, my house. I still get life. Thank God for life. I can rebuild.
After days of waiting, the force of Dorian finally hit, slamming into the Bahamas. Wind gusts of 350 kilometres an hour tore roofs off homes. All terrified locals could do was pray.
Me and my baby, everyone that stay in the apartment building, we stuck right here. Please pray for us.
A huge storm surge inundated roads, and the floodwaters stayed after the rain and wind stopped. Now residents who've lost their homes are pleading for help.
We need help. Please, someone please come help us.
This is probably the most saddened and worst day of my life to address the Bahamian people.
Dorian is continuing to build as it edges closer to Florida. After days of preparation, it's a waiting game to see if it hits.
This is an uncomfortably close track offshore of the Florida Atlantic coast. Any deviation to the west will mean a bigger and more severe local impact.
As the monster storm sits off the coast, authorities are doing everything they can to get Florida hurricane ready. Evacuations have been put in place up and down the coast, and police are patrolling, ordering everyone to leave now. If Dorian doesn't turn north, more than 20 million people face devastation.
It's a little stressful. Keeps going back and forth. It's coming, it's not coming.
Begin with the relentless threat from Hurricane Dorian, rapidly strengthening over the past 24 hours to a monster Category 5 storm, striking the Bahamas with 185-mile-per-hour winds and now heading towards the U.S. mainland. As we come on, take a look. The hurricane is still churning over parts of the Bahamas and just 150 miles from the Florida coast. Dorian slamming ashore in the northern Bahamas, the most powerful storm ever recorded to strike the island nation. The rain and storm surge flooding streets surrounding homes, trapping people inside. The first images of the damage just coming in. Power and communications are gone. Tonight, Hurricane Dorian is now heading towards the U.S. mainland, but its impact in the Bahamas is revealing just how dangerous the storm can be.
Tonight, Hurricane Dorian tearing across parts of the Bahamas. The powerful Category 5 storm pummeling the Abaco Islands with relentless rain and that damaging wind.
You can see what it's doing here, and off in the distance, those waves crashing against the pier. Officials fear that this storm will leave catastrophic damage here in this part of the islands.
The eye of the storm passing right through the Abaco Islands. Intense gusts continuing. The wind so strong we had to take cover inside.
I don't know how well you can see it, but I want you to listen to the wind and the howl of the wind as it goes by. Look at that. Those are the wind gusts that we have seen and that officials have warned about.
The whole roof came off.
Roofs ripped away and the power knocked out.
We've seen large pieces of debris flying in the other direction. All right, and it looks like we've just lost power.
Dorian, the second strongest storm ever recorded in the Atlantic. Denise Fernandez with Miami station WPLG, also at the same hotel.
We rode out the storm in the bunker room. We had to hold on to the door for about 10 minutes because if we let go, it would have blown off.
Americans stuck on these islands sending us these videos.
It's a little scary. Some of the roof pieces blowing off, but no structure yet.
The storm moving slowly across the region.
Everyone, please pray for us, please. Please, my baby's only 4 months old. Please pray for us. My baby car seat.
The aftermath devastating.
We need help. Please, someone please come help us.
Some of the homes here vulnerable to the storm's relentless winds. Now, the wait to see what Dorian has left behind of parts of this island nation.
Communications are very difficult tonight. As you could see, it's still a very dangerous situation there.
I have seen utter devastation here in Marsh Harbor. We are surrounded by water with no way out. The storm surge taking over the terrain. Absolute devastation. There really are no words. It is pure hell here. We have also seen astonishing moments where people, we caught them swimming to safety. We had been hearing that this Category 5 would have devastating winds, and the meteorologists, the experts, the officials, they were right.
Mandatory evacuation as of 1 p.m.
Tonight, along parts of Florida's East Coast, the rush is on to get out.
This storm at this magnitude could really cause massive destruction, and do not put your life in jeopardy by staying behind.
In Palm Beach County, Donna Kirby is evacuating her parents, both in their late 80s.
If it doesn't take that turn north, it's coming straight in here at Category 5, so you have to act.
Today, President Trump visited FEMA's headquarters.
I'm not sure that I've ever even heard of a Category 5. I knew it existed, and I've seen some Category 4s. You don't even see them that much, but a Category 5 is something.
Yet during his administration, 3 hurricanes impacting the U.S. were Category 5s at one point: Irma, Maria, and Michael.
Coastal flooding has already been a problem here this past week with one of the highest tide levels of the year, so Dorian could only increase the risk of extreme flooding.
Back in Florida, businesses banking on Labor Day weekend rushed to board up as Dorian intensified.
It's something we're really counting on this time of year, but yeah, it came at a bad time, this storm.
It's changed course a little bit over the weekend. Are you finding people are following the evacuation orders now?
The evacuations began just a few hours ago for certain low-lying areas, and from what we have seen, many people are heeding the warnings. A Cat 5 will definitely get your attention. And to our north, more mandatory evacuations are expected tomorrow.
Now, the most amazing thing is that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God! It's making its own weather!
Mr. President, one of our thermospheric satellites malfunctioned over Afghanistan. So your proposal is what?
We shut down all satellites.
I don't need to remind all of you how many people died from catastrophic climate conditions.
Make sure there's no further incidents.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning.
Oh! NASA's playing God! It's making its own weather! NASA's playing God! It's making its own weather! NASA's playing God! It's making its own weather!
I mean, lasers? Really? To change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops? And if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine.
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting, Professor Michio Kaku. Thank you so much.
NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.
NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.